Hi guys, Edgar here. I'm going to go over a high-power clone that's relatively popular. This is a used one, obviously. It's an Arcus 94C. The C meaning it is a compact model. Now you notice that the term compact is maybe just a tad relative in this sense. It's not a large handgun by any means, but it still has the 13 round. Being a high-power clone, it still has a 13 round magazine. Let me show you that it is in fact empty. And the size is, I'd say, sort of a moderate size. It's not really a small size, and this being a full metal handgun, it's got a bit of weight to it. It's kind of weight that I like. I think I've mentioned before that when it comes to the really light handguns, I'm not a big fan of them. I just don't enjoy the recoil of really light handguns. This, of course, is a 9mm. And the Arcus, it's a Bulgarian handgun. Now, when I say it's a clone, a high-power clone, it has a few parts that apparently will not swap out with a regular high power. Either the FNs, the Bulgarian Hi-Power, or the Argentine Hi-Power. Nevertheless, the construction is almost exactly the same. It's slight cosmetics out here, but the takedown, as you're going to see, is exactly like the normal high powers. In fact, let's pop the magazine out. It does have a magazine safety like the other high powers have. Let's pull it back, bring the second notch back to the safety, notch that up, and then, like with all the high powers, you're going to push that portion of the lock, the slide lock. You lift the slide lock up a little bit, push it out, and the lock comes out. Take the safety down, holding this so you don't throw your parts across the room, and it slides off pretty much like a standard high power. You're going to see the recoil spring, which has got that high power looking little circular part that's on the recoil on the guide rod itself, and of course that just comes out and it looks pretty much like what you could expect with a high power. Parts are well made. This is a used handgun that I got a little while ago, and I was taking a look at whether or not it seemed to be worn, how well things were machined. It really looks pretty good. I know some people talk about how rough the machining is on some of the Arcuses. I'm not seeing that. I actually see that, at least in this particular handgun, it looks pretty well made to me. Some have actually talked about how the Bulgarians use a softer steel. Well, I don't know how many rounds have been shot through this. I got it through Century Arms, so I can't really tell how many rounds have been shot. Clearly it's been shot some. It's certainly been carried around because it's got the wear from carry. But there's very little wear on the slide in any of those spots you would expect to see wear if the metal was soft. I'm not so sure that it is that soft. Part of the problem of being a very affordable handgun is that some people are going to say, well, it's got to be made cheaply if it's an inexpensive handgun. And I say to that, poppycock. Anyway, you're going to see the standard wear spot on the magazine that you get with a high power. It's because of that part of the trigger that pushes up against it. That's part of the magazine safety. Now, apparently you can make this a little smoother by trimming that down a skosh. And some people actually talk about removing the magazine safety altogether. I have read a few horror stories in the course of that being done, so personally I'm not going to do it. I'll leave it alone. I have to say that in the case of the Arcus, it's actually got a smoother trigger than my FEG high power. The trigger is actually quite nice. Let's put her back together, bring her over here to the second notch, hold her in. Again, take the slide lock, snap her in. Get her a nice click, bring her forward, put in the magazine, and it's a very smooth trigger. The high powers always have that little bit of a snick to it because of the press against the magazine, but I have to tell you, This one's got a really sweet trigger. And maybe I was just lucky and I got a great one. But I got to tell you, it's better than the FEG. Now, I love my FEG. I love that classic high-power look and feel. But this Arcus, I tell you, it's sweet. She shoots sweet. Felt recoil is actually mild. The sights on the Arcus are actually a little bit nicer than the sights on my FEG high-power. It's got a larger front sight, a wider front sight, which I find easier to see. My old eyes aren't the best. Anyway, I've got to say, if you can find one of these at a reasonable price, I don't believe you're going to be disappointed. This is Edgar. Let me know what you think.